And from third and fourth we have more, but not the entire Bible, not the entire New Testament. According to one New Testament scholar, it's called Dr. Bart Ehrman, he says 94% of the New Testament is from the 9th century or beyond. Remember, 9th century. Dr. Bart Ehrman. He's actually a specialist. He used to be a Christian, by the way. But then he left Christianity. No, he's actually a scholar. He doesn't lie. He bases his study on history. So what he does is he looks at the historic evidence of the manuscripts available, and by dating them, he's able to ascertain what part of the Bible is from which century. But one thing is confirmed by all scholars, including Christian scholars, that from the 1st century you have nothing, 0 manuscripts. So you don't have the oral tradition of memorization, you don't have the manuscripts, you don't have the chain of transmission. So how can you believe what Jesus said in the 1st century is exactly as it is being recorded in the New Testament you hold in your hand? If you don't have manuscripts, how will you, from the 1st century?
Maybe they didn't find it at the 1st century, but it took to the 9th to find it.
Say again?
Maybe they didn't have it at the 1st century, but on the 9th century they actually found
Yeah,
it.
but 9th century is 900 years after Jesus. Can you believe that? 900 years after Jesus, you have a gap of nearly 1,000 years. How will you confirm what Jesus said in the 1st century based on documentation from the 9th century? We can't even remember what we said to each other once we exit this park this evening. Yes? Or maybe tomorrow, or day after tomorrow. Maybe the recording might help. But you and I will forget. You see how much of what we talked about here. We are talking about nearly 1,000 years of gap. And the same with the Old Testament, you know? The earliest manuscript of the Old Testament is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, I believe, which date to about 1,200 years after Moses. More than 1,000 years after Moses. Now you got a gap of nearly 1,000 years in the case of Jesus and more than 1,000 years in the case of Moses. There is no way this Bible that you hold in your hand can be confirmed what Moses said and what Jesus said during that time. So I can just, you know, all the passages we just read, I can just say they are all not reliable, or what you mentioned is not reliable.
I don't think the Bible did that. No one did that.
No, but how will you confirm that? Tell me. Without evidence, how will you confirm? Imagine you lost your birth certificate and there's no other office here which can give you that original birth certificate. Will anyone accept your copy, the photocopy that you have produced from it, which is not the original? Because they always want to match the original with the copy so they can ascertain whether this is a true copy of the original. No one will say that this is a true copy of the original without looking at the original. Yeah? Yeah.
Over time.
So Quran, we have two modes of transmission. One is oral, which is the primary mode. So for example, when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he received the message of revelation from Allah through the angel Gabriel, or Jibril alayhi salam as it's known in Arabic. Yes, he memorized that, and then he would convey that message of the Quran to his companions, who would A, memorize it, B, record it as well in writing. So we have two modes of preservation. And not only this was recorded, which we actually have copies of today from the 1st century al-Hijrah, yes, from the 1st century of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yes, but we also have this tradition, which is the primary mode of preservation, the oral tradition of memorization of the Quran, yes. So it's not like Chinese whispers, because many people think that, oh, it is like Chinese whispers. So if I tell you something and then you pass it on to someone else and you pass it on third, maybe 10 people down the line, that message has now been changed. That's called Chinese whispers, yeah? Where it's orally transmitted, but during the transmission, the message changes. The reason for that is something that doesn't apply to the Quran, is because we don't have just one chain of transmission, like in the example I gave you, but we have multiple chains of attested transmission, and they all agree with each other. Doesn't matter the geographic distance between the two chains. So if I go from here to say South America today, yes, and I ask a person to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran, yes, he will recite it exactly as someone who would recite it in England. So that is the mode of preservation orally, and I've already shown you the mode of preservation through manuscript. So in Birmingham University, we have something called the Birmingham manuscript of the Quran, which is like carbon dated from the period of the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Yes, there's a range of like 50 years or something. So within the very close proximity, we have actual evidence of hard evidence of the manuscripts of the Quran. And that manuscript, when you read it, it is exactly as the Quran that I would be holding in my hand today. That is the level of, of securing the preservation of the Quran. And you know what is the most important level of preservation, or securing the preservation of the Quran? Yes? It's where Allah Himself says in the Quran that He will preserve it. So if you open chapter 15, verse number 9, it says, is that the one where it says, is it 15:9? Yeah? Where it says, Al-Yawma nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa nahnu lahu lahafidhun. It is we who have revealed the zikr, which is the Quran,